Jai Baba, everyone. Margaret Craske, Miss Margaret Craske's Persian name that Baba gave her was Zuleika. Miss Margaret Craske was born on November 26, 1892 in Mutford, Suffolk, England. She was the daughter of Edmund and Hannah Craske. She had two sisters, Dorothy and Olive. She was very athletic, but she actually began dancing at an older age. She was 14 years old, but was immediately considered a dance prodigy.
Wow.
In 1918, she began dance lessons with the renowned Enrico Cicchetti in London. In 1920, Diaghilev, a Russian promoter of the arts, actually also hired Margaret, and she danced with his Russian dance company under the name of Margarita Krasova or Kraskova. Not sure which one it was. So she had an extended career as a ballerina, but her career came to an end when she damaged her Achilles tendon. At that time, she became Cicchetti's assistant, and when he retired in 1932, she took over teaching at his studio. He had given her a certificate to teach, which was a very rare honor. Between 1929 and 1931, Margaret lost everyone she valued. Her mother, father, fiancé, Diaghilev, and Anna Pavlova died. Margaret needed a place to rest and recover. On her way to the south of England, she met a woman who told her about Meredith Starr's retreat in East Chalcombe, Devonshire, suggested Margaret visit. It wasn't until the end of the train trip that she told Margaret that there were 4 hours of meditation. But Margaret went on to the retreat when it was time, and when she arrived, she was immediately drawn to a photo she saw there of Meher Baba and asked who that was. When Meredith Starr explained, he said, "Oh, but Baba might not come for 5 years." Baba ended up coming 5 months later to London with many of his followers. In London, he ended up with a small group of women that he called Kimco at the time. And the women that he called Kimco were Mabel Ryan, who also taught with Margaret ballet, and they had a dance school together. Kim Tolhurst, Delia de Leon, Kitty Davy, and those were Kimco, Kimco. In 1931, it was Margaret who opened the door for Baba when he first arrived at the London home of Herbert and Kitty Davy's parents to begin his mission in the West. Of that first meeting, Margaret wrote, "He was standing at the foot of the steps leading to the front door, dressed in a thin white gown, a soft furry coat, and a pink turban. And he was looking at the house very quietly. He passed in through the door and gave me a smile in passing. A little later, I went in to see him. I was very nervous and did not know how to address him. But as soon as I entered the room, I was completely won over by the love which seemed to permeate his whole personality. He spelt out on the alphabet board, 'It was your love that brought me to the West.'" She saw him at that moment as a vision of gentleness, grace, and love that touched the heart immeasurably. Before that day was out, she said, "I only knew that from that moment, whatever rough treatment he may have afterwards handed out, there has never been a moment's doubt as to his being the embodiment of life and love." Baba asked her to come to East Chalcombe, which she did, for 4 days, beginning on September 19th, 1931. She wrote, "Of the 4 days which I was in Devonshire with him and the group, it is difficult to write. The whole time was invested with a dreamlike quality of pure love, timelessness, and great beauty." Near the end of 1931, she traveled to Paris with Baba. Because she spoke French very well, he asked her to accompany him on the train to Marseille, where he and those accompanying him would embark on a ship back to India. She had the train compartment next to Baba's. He told her if he knocked 3 times, that meant, "I love you." She was to knock back 3 times. This transpired throughout the night. In 1931, when they were at the station saying goodbye to Baba, who was leaving England, Chanji said of Margaret, "She is a link type. Baba must have Margaret." The first time Baba asked her to dance, she was wearing a tight skirt, country boots, and there was no flat surface. Kenneth Ross joined in with his bagpipes. In mid-April 1932, Margaret went to East Chalicombe to be with Baba. In July of that year, they met Baba in Santa Margherita. They stayed at the Villa Fiorenza. Baba was in a playful mood. He made signs, and Chanji translated that Baba said I should give him a dancing lesson. This was fun of the highest order. Chanji took Baba's hand, introduced him as Thomas, and brought him to class. I then took his hand and showed him a simple 1, 2, 3 hop step, no obstacles. He took it at once, and then hand in hand, we flew around the garden path, and I really mean flew. He could move as no one else has ever moved, with joy, freedom, rhythm. And I knew, without intellectualizing it, that dancing was, is, and always will be a part of God. The next time she danced for Baba, she had no prep, was wearing heavy clothing. There was an old gramophone with broken, scratchy records. She danced around the tables for 1/2 hour. Baba returned to India in August of 1932. In February of 1933, Margaret was among the first Westerners to accept Baba's invitation to visit India for quite some time. After 3 weeks, they were sent back home. But she went along on that visit. In 1933 in Portofino, Margaret said, "Baba, I want in the present to be your fiancé." Baba was delighted with her attitude. A few days later, he took an Egyptian scarab ring from his pocket and slipped it on her finger. She never took that off. Baba then invited them to the Nasik ashram in December 1936. It was considered a luxury ashram, and Baba took them traveling as well, especially to cooler spots during the hot season. This time they stayed until July 1937. When they returned by ship, Mera and others traveled with them. When she returned, Baba placed Rustam and Frani's son Falu in her care. She was to see to his education. During the war year of 1939, Margaret received an order from Baba to come to India immediately and bring Falu. He also ordered Delia to come at that time, but the authorities would not let her go because she didn't have a good reason. Because Margaret had, there's the Falu that she was caring for, who had to get back to India, and she was granted the authority. But it's also was written that the authorities thought, because of the way Margaret carried on at that time to get him to go, and of course she wanted to also be going to India, that it was possible they thought he was the son of a Maharaja. So she did get her papers. And they wouldn't let her take her money with her. So she eventually left London, brought Falu with only 2 10-pound notes in her shoes. They arrived in Colombo, Sri Lanka. The money in her shoes paid for their passage to Bangalore, where they met Meher Baba. Margaret spent the next 7 years in his ashram. She was given the job of reading the newspaper to him and then reading other books, including Agatha Christie, P.G. Wodehouse, Rex Stout, Tolkien, and others. She was also given the task of teaching Mara, Mani, and others to swim. She said Mara learned to swim due to her one-pointed devotion to whatever Baba asked of her. Margaret also taught the women calisthenics. During the war, she taught self-defense to those in the women's ashram. She was also in charge of caring for many animals in the ashram. One day, while they were all meditating, instead of taking Baba's name, she found herself repeating the name of the bunny, Sunny Bunny, Sunny Bunny, Sunny Bunny. There was a sick black dog that came. Mara asked to keep it. Margaret was asked to bathe the dog. On the morning of October 1st, 1943, the black dog bit Margaret on the wrist and knee. They didn't know that a rabid brown dog had bitten the black dog. Mara applied potassium permanganate on Margaret's wrist and knee, but she still had to undergo injections against rabies, which were very painful. Baba gave them a Siamese cat, Geisha, as a pet. He directed Margaret to look after the cat. At the beginning of June 1944, it was pouring rain one night when Baba suddenly ordered Margaret to throw the cat outside. Margaret hesitated and said, "But Baba, it's raining so hard. That is cruel." The next night, the same scene occurred. Baba snapped, "Whose cat is it anyway, yours or mine?" Days later, Margaret read about D-Day. The invasion of D-Day had been postponed one day because of the storm over the English Channel. Coincidentally, the code words for the invasion to begin were, "Throw the cat out in the rain." In 1946, Baba asked her to return to London and go to the US, where she would lay cables for him. Baba opened his hands and spelled on his alphabet board, "You must go. I have made you my link in America." Margaret understood the meaning of this when she realized how many in the world of dance she told about Meher Baba. On May 1st of that year, Baba personally took Margaret to Delhi, from which she would travel to Bombay to book passage for England. After 7 years in India, Margaret was returning home. At the Delhi train station, Baba told her, "Take my love to the West." And, she had been she'd been in seclusion pretty much in the ashram, and now suddenly she was with all these military men on the ship. She got back to the US, to New York by chartered airplane after briefly going to Canada to obtain the appropriate visa. She was 54 years old. The dancers Anthony Tudor and Lucia Chase invited her to give lessons at their dance company, American Ballet Theater. In 1947, New Year's Day, she was also teaching in San Francisco. In 1950, the American Ballet Theater and the Metropolitan Opera joined to form the Metropolitan Opera Ballet School, and she taught there. During all this time that she was teaching, Baba came to the West, to New York, on 3 separate occasions. In April of 1952, Margaret met Baba and his mandali at the opening of the Meher Center in Myrtle Beach. After the historical gathering, she left to resume her teaching responsibilities. On May 24th, 1952, the car accident occurred in Prague, Oklahoma, as Baba and others were traveling to California. At that time, Delia de Leon phoned Margaret and told her that Baba wanted her to come to Prague at once. The next day, she flew there. Baba asked her to exercise the muscles on the right side of his body without moving the bone structure. 3 times a day, she worked on Baba's muscles on his right side and also did what she could to help Mara and Elizabeth. When they returned to Myrtle Beach, Margaret helped while Baba, Mara, Mani, Meru, and others were there to recuperate from the accident, and that was at Yopan Dunes. In 1956, Margaret Craske sat at the main table with Baba and others at the Longchamps restaurant dinner at the Delmonico Hotel in New York City. She accompanied several of her dancers to the Meher Center, and then Baba visited Holiday Lodge in San Francisco before leaving the US for Australia. In 1958, she was also at the Meher Spiritual Center during Baba's visit there. She told Tex Hightower, Peter Saul, and Don Mahler, her dancers, and another, to carry Baba's chair at the Meher Center. Helen Bunty Kelly, who was Scottish, and one of her dancers taught the dancers the Highland Fling, and they performed this dance for him at the barn at the Meher Center. On Friday, May 30th, 1958, Kitty, Delia, and Margaret went to Baba's house for a final goodbye. For a few seconds, he gestured for the 3 women to stand before him, and he put his hand to his heart, pointing to each of them who had been with him since 1931. In 1962, Margaret returned to India, attending the East-West Gathering in Pune. She continued teaching, was the director of the Metropolitan Opera Ballet School until the school closed. She joined the Manhattan Festival Ballet, and she moved to ballet school in New York. She also taught at Jacob's Pillow in Massachusetts and the Juilliard School of Music and Dance during those years. She retired in 1986 at the age of 94 and moved to Myrtle Beach. She lived at Happy House on the Meher Center. She was a member of the Meher Spiritual Center's board of directors for many years. She shared stories of her life with Baba with Meher Center visitors, and she also gave ballet classes in the living room. She died on February 18th, 1990, in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Her ashes are interred at Upper Meherabad, next to those of Elizabeth Patterson, near Baba's Samadhi. And the words on her tomb shrine are, Margaret Craske, Meher Baba's dancer. What Baba said of Margaret. When they first met, Meher Baba told Margaret, I had not expected to find you so fast. Of her, Baba said, you're a jewel of a disciple. The women montly nicknamed Margaret the Duchess and referred to her in correspondence by that name. No matter what she wore, she carried herself like a duchess. She wrote 2 books about her life with Baba, The Dance of Love in 1980 and Still Dancing with Love in 1990, published. She shared stories of her life with Baba in both of these books. Margaret was also the author of 2 books, which are standard references on the Cecchetti ballet technique. In 1950, she wrote The Theory and Practice of Allegro in Classical Ballet with C.W. Beaumont, and then wrote The Theory and Practice of Advanced Allegro in Classical Ballet with Dara Di Marotta. In her obituary, Dance Magazine said she greatly influenced how ballet technique is taught. What a life. Say, Baba, thank you.
Jai Baba. Thank you.
Bravo, bravo, Karen.
Jai
Thank you
Baba
for your
and
person.
Jai Baba.
Thanks.
What was her name that Baba gave her? What does it mean?
Zulika. I don't know the meaning of it.
She's the wife of the captain of guards in Egypt.
Oh.
And when Joseph, I heard Margaret tell the story. It was so beautiful. She called him instead of Joseph, Yusuf. And he ended up in Egypt because his brothers were jealous of him being the favorite. He had this beautiful multicolored coat his father had given him. And she was desirous of him. She called him to her, and he didn't want to have to do with her. So she rent her garment and called the guards to put him in prison. And Myrtle was so excited telling the story. She says, and Zuleika loved Yusuf so much they had him put in prison. And I thought, well, Myrtle would know. Love is love, you know. Anyway, that was Zuleika. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks for your perseverance, Karen. I'm going to go ahead and see if I can get this.
I wanted to say one thing, Karen. You know, Baba's first order to Margaret was to shut every door in Kitty Davy's parents' house. And she was to open the front door, which, you know, you can't be shutting people's doors. So it went against any convention I would think that they'd have in England. And she was to let him in. Yeah.
It's interesting that you tell the story of Egypt because he gave her Scrab's ring.
Yeah.
It also belongs to Egyptian lore. Interesting.
We don't need them.
Yeah, well,
Dancer dancing to his word, footsteps winging as a bird, abandoned flight of blazing light, whirling in divine romance. Dancer, dancer, dance his dance to the drum of God men's heart, in which all music has its start. From creation's soundless singer to every gesture, every glance. Dance, dancer, dance, dance. In the bower of his smile, you may want to rest a while, but keep on dancing, dancer, please not to rush. His dance can never cease, not to rush. His dance can never cease. dancing to his word, footsteps winging as a bird, abandoned flight of blazing light, whirling in divine romance.
Is there reason to be hopeful that some of these ills can be corrected?
His dance, dance, his dance, his dance, dance, his dance, dance, his dance, his dance, his dance, dance, his dance, his dance, dance, his dance, dance, his dance, his dance, his dance, Nocturne, his dance, can never cease, dance, his dance, his dance, dance, his dance, dance, his dance, his dance, his dance, dance, his dance, his dance, oh dance, his dance, his dance, his dance, his dance, Nataraja's dance can never cease, never cease.
Baba, wonderful. Mm.
Jai Baba.
Thank you, Lucy. It's beautiful.
Well, I think the first time that I met Margaret was in 1970, my first day at the center, and she was talking in the well, no, it was in the library. And I was there the day she locked the door. So I was new. I think I ended up sitting close to the front so I could hear her. The room was packed. And then there was this thing about her locking the door so that anybody late missed it. And I was just completely transfixed and transformed. Her story, the way she could tell about seeing Baba for the first time, just opening and reaching into your heart. It was quite something. The next thing that I wanted to share was there was a woman. I'm a member of Al-Anon, and my former husband and I used to live in Virginia. We got a call from the Al-Anon hotline to pick up someone that needed a ride to an Al-Anon meeting. She had called in and asked if anybody could come get her. So he and I went, and this woman had MS, and she got a wheelchair and then into the back of our car, and then we started off. And I'm not even sure how far we went before she said, "To look at me now, you would never know that at one time I was a ballerina."
Wow.
And I think maybe I said, "Wow." And she said, "I was taught by the most prestigious ballerina in New York City."
Wow.
I said, "Oh, what was her name?" And of course she said Margaret Craske.
Wow.
So my husband and I both were just you know, how that would be. So we proceeded on to the meeting, and then I think she needed a ride another time, and we went and picked her up. And I took, all I had was that calendar, and there was Margaret sitting, and then behind her was this beautiful photo of Baba. So I didn't want to rip up my calendar, but I did. And I kind of fixed it up nicely, and then I gave it to this woman as she was so moved to have, she just loved Margaret. I mean, she just loved Margaret. So the photo meant quite a bit to her. And unfortunately, the woman didn't do well. She took her life, actually. And I always thought, you know how Baba works. It was just so wonderful to be able to give her a photograph of Mayor Baba before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that sticks with me. And then the next thing has to do with Sunny Bunny. I have
Oh,
Mr. Bunny, and Mr. Bunny sleeps with me at night. And
Oh,
I know he sleeps under my shoulder. So Mr.
oh,
Bunny, anyway, a friend gave him to me a long time ago, and I just, you know, I confess, I sleep with him. So there are times when in the middle of the night I wake up and I want to start saying Meher Baba, but I start saying Mr. Bunny. Or
like
I'll wake
Margaret.
up in the morning and say, "Good morning, Mr. Bunny." Oh, good morning, Baba. I'm sorry. Now I feel better.
Amazing. Did that happen of its own accord, Ruthie, or did you kind of instigate it?
It
Did it?
just happened. So thank you,
Wonderful.
Margaret, for taking away that guilt about me and Mr. Bunny. The other thing I'll share quickly, I took a friend once to the center, and this woman was hardcore. You know, I worked with heroin addicts back in the day, and she was a heroin addict, and we became friends, and we shared our ideas about spirituality and life and so forth. So eventually, she wanted to come to the center, and she did. And Baba gave her such wonderful things. Like when we pulled in, I've told this story, we pulled in, the right front fender arced a rainbow.
Oh, Baba.
So as we're pulling into the Baba Center, this big rainbow appears out of the right front fender of my car. So that was the start. But I took her to meet Margaret because I knew if anybody would touch this woman's heart, it would be Margaret Craske. And so she and I went and met with Margaret, and we sat on Kitty's back porch. And one of us, she might have hit me and said, "Ask about the ring," or I might have on my own, or she asked. We asked about that scarab ring. "Did Baba give you that ring, Margaret?" And so she said, "Well, actually," she said, "you know, in the days, all the women would always constantly be going on about, 'Oh, Baba, when you were Rama, I was Sita, wasn't I?' Or when you were this, I was that. I'm always the wife. I was your wife." And so that's when Margaret approached him at one point and said, "Baba, I would just love to be engaged to you, and you never have to marry me." The next day, Baba shows up with the scarab ring. So years passed, and I went over to Happy House to see her. And I said, "You know, Margaret, that story about the ring, I told my husband." And she said, "Oh, no." She said, "That wasn't meant for you to tell anybody."
oh.
I know. It's like, oh, dear God. Yeah, that was, it was like it was a secret thing I wasn't supposed to tell. So I also felt vindicated when it came out in her book. Then I no longer had to carry that little piece of guilt around about revealing that secret. Those are my Margaret stories that I can think of. And it looks like Betty's got one. Jay Baba.
Oh, beautiful. These were beautiful. You didn't share them before, not all of them.
Karen, when you were telling the story about Margaret coming back, and she, I think it was in England that she, Anthony Tudor, she maybe joined his group for a while. I remember in fact, there's a video that he he said to her, he said, "Hello, ducks, seen the light?" And there's a video of her telling her. In fact, there are three. There's one called The Frivolous Three, and then there's one just called Hello Ducks. That is Margaret telling her story. But yeah, so I wanted to add that little bit. I don't have a personal. I never met Margaret actually, but yeah. Anyway, so
He
now
was
that's
busy teaching all the time, right?
I didn't get back to Myrtle Beach until after she had passed. Mhm.
Hello, Rex.
So
Thanks. Rosalie, you're
Yeah, I wanted to tell this.
uh,
I was at the center. I don't know what year it was, but there was a senator. I don't know if he was South Carolina or U.S. senator, but you know, he was just full of himself. And I guess they wanted to maintain the exemptions that spiritual places get. So he was strutting around, and Jane Haynes was all over him with her Southern hospitality. And I had brought Jane Haynes because I knew Zazu Pitts had given her place up to Jane. And I found an old picture of Zazu. And so I showed it to her, and she was with the senator. They were right by the original kitchen. And she totally lost her all encompassing Southern charm. And she went, "Oh, Zazu." And he was like, he had been a bubble popped. He kind of looked around like, what happened? And it was so funny. He almost bumped into Margaret Craske, and she shot him a glance that if he said, he would have never recovered. She was, she was so, she was not, she realized the top, she was one that she never felt jealous of Mara. She totally respected Mara's role. I mean, to me, she's God in the female side of God. And she respected that. Now, there's where I felt the jealousy. Yeah, but no, Margaret, and that's why it's so interesting that he nicknamed her Zuleika, and that Mara ends up, I'm there and she's telling this story, and then she's just so, shaking her head and looking up and saying, and Zuleika loved Yusuf so much, she put him in jail. And I thought, wow, Mara knew what love was. She just knew, of anyone. Yeah. Okay, Baba. And at one other time, I was not locked out of the room and she was giving a talk. I don't remember what she said, but I tell you, her skin, the only thing I could compare it to was a beautiful rose petal. It looks, and she was what she was in age, and it was the most beautiful skin she had. I was just enthralled with like her being and loving Baba, just that it was showing her skin too. It was like, it really precious, just precious. Hey, Baba.
Jai Baba. Jai Baba. Rosa. Jai Baba.
Zuleika was one of Pharaoh's wives.
Yeah, hold on one second.
Didn't dare want to sleep with her.
Go ahead, Rosa.
Jai Baba. I had one short interaction with Margaret in Myrtle Beach, and I'd been living there for 6 years, and I had just heard that Margaret was living at Happy House, and that any of, all of us who were there locally were welcome to come visit her. So I was sitting there, And my recollection that there was silence, there wasn't conversation. And Margaret was maybe even sitting a little bit behind me. And all of a sudden, she says to me, now this is 35 years ago. She says to me, oh, you have a very balanced mind. And I stammered in shock. And I don't even know what I said or just nodded my head in gratitude. But that because of Margaret's integrity and how astute she was, and her vast, unwavering devotion and love for Baba, I took it as a message from Baba, although I've never really understood it, because I wouldn't describe myself that way now. And 35 years ago, let me tell you, I would not have described myself like that. Anyway, that's my Margaret interaction, and it's a very special gift I carry in my
Rosa,
heart.
I didn't hear it clearly. She said, what about your mind?
You have a very balanced mind.
Balance.
And I took that to mean, it took me a while to get it.
Yeah.
Which was that it was the dual functions of the mind, the cognitive and the heart. But honestly, I did not experience myself like that at all. And in times of my, especially currently, you know, this clearing that's going on, I know not just with me, but with everybody, some of the stuff that comes out doesn't seem very balanced at all in this unwinding. So I don't know, Baba's sweetness is so surprising sometimes, and
Exactly.
kind of enigmatic. Yeah. So I asked and he wanted me to share it, so I shared it.
That's so cool. Thank you, Rosa.
Thanks,
Okay,
Rosa. Yeah.
I could see that. But
Thank you for
what
that.
do I know? Huh? Yeah.
Thank you for that. His other name.
I don't remember. I wanted to add something about, because people know Phyllis Frederick. Phyllis Frederick and Adele Walken lived with, we call it the big guns in New York, with Elizabeth Patterson, Irina Machiavelli, and Nadine Tolstoy. And I don't know what happened, but Margaret had Phyllis stick up for herself. And I love that about Margaret. She was like direct to Baba. No middleman, you know. And I love that about that she didn't honor middleman, including the senator. You know, I mean, it's like just so much an authority in loving Baba. You know, she just, and Link, she was invited to the men's meeting that they had in India. Baba, always Margaret got to be in these meetings, all men and Margaret. Yeah, she was a link. Yeah.
Thanks, Rosalie.
Oh, and by the way, that song is from Monty's letter to Margaret. That beautiful song about
Dancer.
Yeah, it's so Margaret. It's so beautiful. I always request when Buzz sings here that I said, can you sing that Naturage, you know? Yeah, it's very special.
Nihal, Jai Baba.
Yeah, so very precious those who met her, because she was mostly with the dancers. So not many people would have met her unless they came to the center when she was there, and she wasn't there all the time, except when she was old. So of course I didn't meet her in the body. And just recalling today the stories, and I was remembering, yeah, the stories with the cat, and which is beautiful, and what else did I remember? Yeah, and the dancing with Baba, you know, flying around with Baba, and the knocking on the in the train, you know, because she didn't sleep all night because he kept knocking and 3 times, and she knocked 3 times, and then she was going to sleep, and then he knocked 3 times, so she knocked 3 times. So he didn't let her sleep. So the next morning they went for coffee, and someone told her that Baba doesn't like makeup. So she didn't put any makeup on, so she didn't sleep all night. So she was probably drawn, you know. And they were sitting at the table, and Baba was saying, and so she thought, I don't remember what she thought, but she didn't understand what he meant. So he showed her, he did that again, you know. She couldn't get it. So finally she got it. That he says, you know, put some rouge on, put some makeup on. And she's the one who took him to France because she knew French or something like that. So she's the one who got to be traveling with him there. So yeah, and she was called a jewel because that's a funny story too. So she, like Rosalie said, she didn't like all these, you know, messy things. She likes to be straight. So so everyone is like, you know, playing up to him, and you know, like Rosalie said about that, everyone wants to be his wife, and Sita and drama and all that. And she says, no, just, you know, it's okay, just let's get engaged, let's get engaged. But then in Meherabad, she was thinking to herself at a time, certain time, that she was a jewel of her disciple. And she was sure that, I mean, you know, she's looking at herself in the, I do believe in that, you know, she looks in herself in the mirror, straight in the eye, and she's a very direct woman. So she's thinking, oh, she's a jewel of her. One time, Baba says, because, you know, he knows everything. He says, oh, you are a jewel of a disciple. At first, she took it as a compliment, but later on, she understood the idea. And she got off this thing of being a jewel of a disciple. But so what I heard about Margaret was that she was the strictest person on earth. I heard that from students. She was so strict that everyone was really afraid of her. That's what I heard, you know. So I'm cleaning the shrines. And you know, and each one has their, you know, each one is there, you know, they have their essence, they have their essence there, you know, not by chance that they have those ashes there. So I come to her, and she is so funny. She has the most funny humor, you know. So I you know, I thought I was mistaken. Because I've heard she was so strict that everyone was so afraid, and I know she was. I know that it's true, you know, she would be very strict. So I come to her, and she's funny. She has this humor. And then, like Betty said about the three stooges, what were they?
Frivolous three, Baba called.
Frivolous three. Then I saw she has the most wild, absolutely creative, absolutely out of the world humor. Now, Baba, like Baba has great humor. So she really liked that, you know, she really hooked onto that, and he also on hers. So they had this probably a lot of humor between them. So this is one thing that I learned from her by her shrine. And also what surprised me in this room was actually a great softness. and then a great softness. I felt in this Zoom that there was a great softness. And she does not impress one as being soft, but there was a great softness in this Zoom. So I feel that that comes from her as well. So we sometimes know this part of this person, and then we don't know the other parts. And so this came out very, very strong. Another thing that came up that surprised me a lot was that she was born in 1982, which I heard today, and I said, "Wow, she is Baba's age. She's older than him 2 years," and so it really, I don't know why that's the first time that I see the date so close, and then that was a wow for me today. And also another thing was that he made her live. Oh, Baba, he made her live till she was 98. She was 90. No, it says 90. I don't know. I looked it up in the calendar. 97. Well, that's enough.
Anyway,
that's enough. Dead. I won't argue because I looked it up and I'm not good at math, so maybe she was 7 and not 8. But wow, and she was all a skeleton. He just left her on and on and on, like he left Kitty Davy. And I'm sure she didn't want to stay so long. I'm sure. So so that was, like carrying the load of Baba. And you see at the end of that is so beautiful, Ruthie. At the end of the film, of the video, where she has this little baby. And the first thing that he's doing is he's looking at her Baba locket. I don't know if she had a Baba locket, but he was looking at the locket, not looking at her directly. And then the kiss, and then the sweet kiss that he's coming close to her mouth to give her a kiss, and she's coming close to him. So I was thinking about her when she was 90 plus, having a hard time to keep on, but keeping on for Baba, and then having this little baby come to her, and having this joy of meeting this beautiful little soul. So knowing that she was doing Baba work with this, and that is, some joy to have. But Baba, I don't want to live that long for sure. Thank you, Baba. Jai Baba.
Michal, you brought up so many beautiful things. And the baby's name was Margaret, named after Margaret.
Oh, yeah. Oh.
Yeah, that was their first meeting. She's grown up now.
Yeah.
But I'm not as familiar with the family, so that I couldn't really bring a picture.
Oh.
The elephant.
The name Margaret actually means pearl. And so when he said she was one of his jewels, a pearl, and her life was full of difficulty. If you're bit by a mad dog in India, forget it, it's like, wow. And she had many things, losing everyone she loved. And so it creates something beautiful. It keeps coding that pain. And I was kind of afraid of her, but the little times I met her, and Phyllis Frederick and she would exchange murder mysteries. So I knew how much Phyllis loved her, and that she had Phyllis stand up for herself. And, the dancers, she would not speak of Baba. They had to be invited to her little room that she had many years in New York, and then she would tell them. But yeah, she
didn't proselytize.
Oh no, absolutely.
No, you had to dig that name out of her.
Oh yeah, and then it was like an outpouring. And
Betty's had her hand up,
yeah.
So let's let Betty bring forth something here for a minute.
couple of things.
Yeah.
One, my friend Jeannie, Huey's wife, Jeannie, was a student of Margaret's, and she talked about going up to Margaret's room and her giving a photo. This was when she was, oh, late teens. So yeah, that was Jeannie's connection. But also, Margaret and Agnes Barron were great friends. They were really had similar. What's the word? They were like they were both kind of rebels, and when at Meherabad, they had Baba had people do silence for 40 days, and they did that at Meherabad, and Margaret was out there. I have a couple of photos. One of her with Margaret with a scythe out in the cutting the grass out at Meherabad, and so they were just kindred spirits and great friends. That's it.
That's great memories, Betty. Yeah, thank you, honey. Jay Baba, it's good to hear from you.
Actually, too, Margaret was Sagittarius, and she could come out quite bluntly,
She was blunt.
She was blunt, and they're known for that. I mean, that's their.
Sad.
But she was definitely a fire. Like Agnes also was a fire.
Burning for
I
Baba.
consider her is like she's a watchdog too, like Agnes. Baba called her as watchdog because she was a watchdog about the middleman. You go straight. You have Christ here. You don't need a middleman. And I completely love Margaret for that. No middleman.
Well, we've got Judy here also from the great Pacific Northwest. So let's hear what Judy's got today. Jay Baba.
Jay Baba. And thanks so much to both Karen and Ruthie for your presentations. Like so many of you have said, I just dearly loved Margaret Craske. I'm a West Coast kid, so I'm a latecomer to Myrtle Beach. I'd been to India and so forth before that, but been with Baba since he dropped his body. But I didn't get to go to Myrtle Beach until 1988 for the very first time. And Baba planned it for me. And I was totally unaware of how special the time that he finally allowed me to go was. And I came at the very beginning of a 3-week celebration of the 30th anniversary of Baba's final visit to Myrtle Beach in 1988, in May, the last 2 weeks of May and the first week of June. But I was only planning on staying for 2 weeks because that was all you could stay. And the most wonderful thing happened for me. At that time, so Margaret Craske was, and I call her Miss Craske because I became very close with Tex Hightower throughout his latter years. And you never said Margaret. The dancers always said Miss Craske. So that's what I feel most comfortable saying in relationship to her. She was staying in Happy House at the time, and all that in 88, the center had sent out an invitation to every person still alive that had been with Baba there in 58 to come as a guest speaker for the Sahavas. So many people came and so many people shared. And it was just a heart fest. And that, of course, included Miss Craske. And she gave some wonderful talks. But what it fell to my lot, as Erich used to say, that the person that was her attendant at that time was named Teresa, and she was burned out taking care of Miss Craske, and she'd met me in India a few years before that, and she came to me and asked, Judy, is there any possibility that you would be willing to give me relief for a few days to take care of Miss Craske? And I jumped at the opportunity. And as you said, I absolutely adored her humor. That was the thing that caught my heart so much. And what I was given the opportunity to see, all of the dancers, the living dancers, were there with her on the screened porch from morning to night, sharing together their memories of Baba and laughing and laughing and laughing. They were all so humorous and so happy. And I was kind of the fly on the wall that got the ambiance of this humorous love for the beloved that they uniquely shared after years and years together. It was so beautiful. And then I had hours of time alone with her, and she would tell me all of these stories that some of which are written in the books and some of which aren't. But she was so real. She was so authentic. She called a spade. And if she, well, for instance, and I think it comes out some in her books, she never really liked Norina Machiavelli much at all. Like, she couldn't stand what she thought was putting on airs and so forth. She was so down to earth, and she didn't like her any better in her final years. And yet in her book, she one of the two books she wrote, she said very graciously and very insightfully that these traits that she didn't like personally in Norina really served, that Norina herself really served Meher Baba through those very traits that she sort of couldn't stand. But it was delightful to be with her, and what a treasure. And with all of the other dancers, when it was just them there. There's something else that I wanted to so as someone's mentioned, Miss Craske was Sagittarius, as was Tex Hightower, and as it turns out, I am also. And I mentioned that I became Tex came out here at my invitation for a Sahavas up in Canada. That anyway, he spent a week here in this little house of mine with me, and we would stay up till 3 in the morning almost every night, laughing and so forth. And those were during the years when I was living in India, at Meherabad, and Tex would come over to Meherabad at the beginning of November each year and stay for 2 to 3 weeks. And just before he'd leave, he'd give me a handful of rupees with the request that I purchase a very beautiful garland and lay it on the 26th of November on Miss Craske's grave, which I duly and happily did each year. There was Tex had so much love, so much respect. Other people have said, yes, as a teacher, she was, do it and do it right. Or as my mother used to say, anything worth doing is worth doing right. And yet there was this so much love that was shared between, I know mostly through text, but certainly all the other dancers. And so I just feel really blessed to have had a connection with her, because I came in sort of at definitely the latter chapters of her life. And I would like to say she was not burdened to stay in that body. My experience with her is she treasured every moment because it gave her a chance to love Baba more and to remember him and so forth. There was no, she wasn't energetic. And, she didn't have the energy, obviously, she had in her youth, but she was so alive. She was so alive to really, as far as I can tell. I didn't get the very last year, but yeah, it wasn't a burden. It was a joy because of her love, her deep, deep love of Mayor Baba, her dear fiance.
Wow, thank you for saying that. So important to me to know that. Yeah. And wow, you are so preciously blessed by so many occasions of being with the Mandali close and seeing from close quarters and going through these special experiences yesterday with Merwan and with Erich, and now with this. Wow.
I'm going to spotlight this, if I can find it, the spotlight, if I can see, which I can't. Hold on.
Yeah.
I can spotlight you. I can spotlight you. You're spotlighted.
So this is a present that I got from Wendy.
Oh.
And it says, dear, can you read it? Go ahead, Miha, can you read it?
No, I'm not good. To Ruth, a real happy birthday. Oh, Queen, are you? No, I'm not good at this.
I can read it.
Yeah, please.
To Ruth, a real happy birthday, oh Queen. Are you 90 or 9 or 19? To tell you the truth, oh dear lovely Ruth, you're the most ageless creature I've seen.
That's beautiful. You received that, Ruthie? You received that from Margaret?
I got this. No, it was a gift from Wendy Connor. It was Ruth White.
Oh, that's a wonderful inheritance. Wow. That's
I have it on my desk, but I thought I'd bring it out just to show she was so clever and so full of just life. Such amazing. Yeah. All right.
So now that I'm thinking that you have a birthday very soon, and so does Judy.
Yeah, we're coming up.
When is yours and when is yours?
Well, let's just stay with Margaret for now.
Okay, I have one funny thing. I have
Go ahead.
Margaret one day she met the man, the young Indian man that had been Narina Machiavelli. And I know this for a fact that when he was born to an Indian Baba family, the women Mandali says, we know this child. Who is this child? We know this child. And Baba said, that is the same soul of that of Narina. So, but the funny part is, he came to the United States and Margaret is there at the center, and he's introduced to her and she says, oh, you were so difficult. You were so difficult to get along with as Narina. I just got such a kick out of that, that she had difficulty.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And also I know I saw it myself. I was invited. I was staying in Mayher Colony, and one day Nashawan Mama, he goes, Norina lives down the road. And I said, oh, I'd like to meet him because I got a Baba grapevine. I knew he was around. And so he comes, he's 16 and very quiet. And that's when I met him. And I have to say, what I learned about serving Baba and doing what Baba wants you to do, your life, he is not even interested in having been Narina. It was kind of, I would think it was a difficult thing for him to be a young boy and, have all this, because she was quite a impactful personality. So, so I'm invited for dinner at his house. I think it was called Shireen's Cottage. And then I saw the like a telegram or from Baba and saying, name this baby Merwan. He is the same soul as that of Narina. And but that importance to me totally is that whatever we're doing in our life and dedicating to Baba is what Baba wants us to do. It's very important because in this world we're celebrity and what's important, and it's only important to serve Baba with your life. What do you have but your life? Yeah.
Thank
Anyway,
you, Ruth.
but I got such a kick out of her. She says, oh, you were so difficult as an arena. And he's just this young guy.
Yeah, she was harsh. She could be harsh.
Oh, yeah.
I remember coming out Kitty's door and I was out on the porch with Kitty and Elizabeth and she walked out. Margaret came out and we all hello. And then she went on a little walk and then she came back and then she stood there and looked at me and said, are you still here? Oh yes, Margaret, unfortunately. I'm sorry. She was tough.
I actually like directness
I
because
like it.
you know what you're getting, it's not
Right,
coated
right.
and you don't have to guess and you don't have to have these vibrations and then your mind tells you something and your heart tells you something.
Well, it may have been getting close to lunch. She figured it was time to move on, let them
Oh, nice. Oh, just let them off. Yeah.
saying.
Can I just say one word? The word that came to me when you said harsh was direct.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
She
well,
was completely direct, whether it was charming and flattering or questioning or critical, just straight. That's why I said she had so much integrity. That was the word that came to me.
Yeah, integrity, right. You can't be like that without being have full integrity.
The straight arrow of a Sagittarius.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
I love Sagittarius. They have the spirit, they can fly and they are very they're not attached. They're not
I'm not going to talk about the back half.
What is back half?
Yeah.
What is the back half? I
The
don't see the
horse's
back half.
ass.
What?
That's it. I don't have to say it twice now.
The
didn't
horse's
hear.
rear end.
The horse's rear end.
No,
The
no, I
horse.
don't.
Yes, it's a horse, and then there's the archer. So
Okay, so it's a Baba horse.
learn the balance. Yeah, learn the balance.
Right, it's true. It's a
Does it-
Baba horse.
Does anyone remember the story? I think it was Tex Tower that told that they were in New York City in a taxi, he and Margaret, or Miss Craske, and they came to the light and they were stopped. And all of a sudden they hear gunfire and a bank robbery was going on. And Margaret just took great delight in seeing this whole event transpire. Anybody remember the details of that story?
I do remember the story, not the details.
There is another story from the
Great.
Nasik ashram that I like,
Thanks,
but I don't
Jonathan.
remember all details. The whole thing was that Kitty Davy was the one in the kitchen in the household, and so she had chapatis. They're put in a tin box, and the tin box, and the chapatis were for the next meal or the next day or something. And she comes and she finds the top of the chapati box. There's a moon half chapati. So she doesn't like the idea. She's a Virgo like me. She doesn't like this idea. She prepared everything, everything is fixed, and then someone comes and there's a half chapati. So next day there's again a half a chapati. No, it's written like a moonlight. It's like left like a moon. She goes to Baba, after it's the second time, that's enough for her. She goes to Baba and she tells, someone is coming into the kitchen and taking these chapatis. What is that? So I think that Baba, what he did, if I remember right, he gathered all the women everyone in the ashram, not only women, and men too, and he said the culprit should come up and say, who is the culprit? I think she didn't get up right away, but I think she got away. She did get up at the end and say that it was her. And because she was, she wanted fun. It's not because she wanted a chapati. She wanted some action, that's why what Jonathan said, reminded me. She wanted some action, And she did have this kind of a wild mind. If you listen to her jokes, the way she tells them, you see this person. She's so straight. She's so correct as a teacher. She's so direct. And she's so, with all the rules and everything. And then she goes wild, totally wild in her mind, And that's why I think she loved Baba, because Baba, if you think what Baba had to understand and to think and to accept, I mean, what he saw, he couldn't even share it with the Mandali because it was just, out of this world. And so even the little that he shared, if you will just read the book and Lord Meher and just think what Baba had to deal with and what he had to hold inside him and what he had to decipher that was happening and seeing and really juggling this whole thing in his mind, then it was just, absolutely, totally something that, woo. So
you need comic relief, huh?
It's not only the comic relief, but it's this kind of mind that can be really creative and really not have any rules on it. Not have any rules, because there's no rules in this chaos that we have made this world into something which is as if not chaotic. Baba sees the chaos and he has to deal with these two pictures. And so she has that kind of mind, and that's why I see the connection is so good. And yes, the wild, the humor that she felt that she had a friend in her humor, in the reaching of her humor, then he could reach that. he could understand that from her.
And Rosalie, what have you have to add?
Well, one thing is,
Thank you, Mia.
Margaret was one of Baba's clowns because she could make him laugh. And Anita Bayard, and I can't remember the third person, but I want to recommend this video that Wendy and Buzz put together. I Am the One Reality, because it involves those 3 weeks that they had with Baba.
Yeah.
And Margaret was there. And Margaret, they were no, they were in India, and they watched the full moon rise over the Taj Mahal, which was not important, but to be with Baba as the full moon's rising, and you know, and but anyway, I recommend this video. I Am the One Reality. It's one of my favorite.
Yeah, it is. I forgot. Thank you, dear.
Yeah.
And there is the frivolous 3 that's still available.
Yeah. Jonathan wanted to say.
Speaking of videos, I happened to come across one time on YouTube. There's a video on Cicchetti's method that Margaret and Mabel taught, and it goes through 6 days demonstration. These dancers demonstrate the routine. There was a routine for each day, and the whole purpose of his method was that so much of ballet is destructive to the anatomy and the muscles. It's really ballerinas and ballet dancers kind of have to abuse their body to do that. What he brought to it was a way to do it without abusing the body. And so these exercises, as I recall, it was 6 days of exercise that are movements that were designed to teach people ballet moves without being destructive to their body.
Oh, that's interesting.
Jonathan.
Wow.
Also, Margaret's dancers, because they had learned this, they didn't have the big bulging muscles that, you know, they just, their bodies look natural. Yeah. And I remember Phyllis Frederick, we would have Brynner Mel, one of our dancers, come to Los Angeles and teach us these stretches. And I still do them because to me, they're pearls. I think of Margaret and, you know, working on Baba's body so to keep his leg in alignment and working on the muscles. I mean, she was out of this world.
Yeah, she was.
Creme de la creme.
Yes.
You know. Wow.
Judy, go ahead, honey.
I meant to share this earlier. In 2001, I did a following Baba's footsteps through Europe tour on my own. And I made a point to go to Santa Margherita, and at the Villa Fiorenzi. That was where it was mentioned on someplace earlier when Margaret gave Baba as Thomas dancing lessons in the backyard. And I managed with some difficulty to find a way to get up beyond the backyard and be able to look down into this space that had been blessed by Baba, where he danced. And the one time that Margaret could really dance beautifully with Baba and not have big boots and so forth on. And, as she said, she knew at that moment that dance was, is, and always will be a part of God. And I could feel such special presence of Baba looking down, I was on property above, but very close. And that still, however many decades later, the really almost, what is it, 70 or something decades later, there was this ambiance not dissimilar from what I would experience in Mera Baba's Samadhi or another special place of Baba's, the Lagoon Cabin or whatever. And so it still radiated all of those years later. That love that Margaret and her beloved fiance, Mera Baba, had together in those moments. It's how
That's beautiful.
precious.
That's beautiful. Wow. Thank you. Thank you, Margaret. Thank you, Baba. Thank you, Lucy. Thank you all for your shares.
Well, let's have a moment of silence then. Jai Baba. If you'd like to unmute. Avatar Meher Baba ki jai. Avatar Meher Baba ki jai. Avatar Meher Baba ki jai. Thank you, everyone.
So Ruthie's birthday is December 9th, and I think Judy's is the 4th. Am I right?